You just can't make this stuff up.
Let me just mention briefly one threat in particular that should concern all Americans. The epidemic of malicious fake news and false propaganda that flooded social media over the past year.
You just can't make this stuff up.
It's now clear that so-called fake news can have real-world consequences.
If the election meant on October 27th, I'd be your president. I was on the way to winning until Russian WikiLeaks raised doubts in the minds of people who were inclined to vote for me but got scared off.
It's imperative that leaders in both the private sector and the public sector step up to protect our democracy, to protect our democracy, to protect our democracy.
You just can't make this stuff up.
In all of this Russia hysteria, one hypocrisy stands out. So-called liberals in the echo chamber of CNN, MSNBC, and the New York Times decry Trump's express policy objective of developing better relations with Russia. Trump is decidedly anti-war. This is usually the position of people who self-identify as liberal. Indeed, better relations with Russia was a cornerstone of Obama's foreign policy. Under Obama, America even sold 20% of its known uranium resources to Russia. That is, after Russia donated $150 million to the Clinton Foundation. Yet, because the so-called liberals hate Trump so much, they are now against the very policy they have always supported. They are literally fomenting war with Russia. This is irrational. This irrationality has led the so-called liberals and the politicians who profit from their discontent to delude themselves that Trump's election was an aberration. They insist that fake news, which is defined as news stories which are intentionally and demonstrably false, affected the election. They have argued with increasing hysteria that not only did fake news affect the election, but also that the Russians were behind it. They insist that this alleged Russian conduct is alarming because foreign powers ought not influence American elections. They insist that the American people are entitled to elections which reflect their voices and to be confident in the democratic process. Not content to bang away on this one bell, the Democrat politicians and the anti-Trump media of all stripes also insist that Trump colluded with the Russians in this nefarious plot to deprive Hillary Clinton of her right to ascend to the throne. Here is an example of the genre.
There was a cooperation in developing strategy about how they could ensure that Hillary Clinton was not elected.
You just can't make this stuff up.
I think that when you saw him absolutely calling Hillary crooked, that was developed strategically with people from the Kremlin, with Putin.
You just can't make this stuff up.
They need Trump. Trump will be there to support lifting those sanctions. They want to drill in the Arctic. They can't get the equipment, the supplies, and all that they need until the sanctions are lifted.
As I have demonstrated in earlier videos, there is not one shred of evidence to support these claims. First, a statistical analysis of the effect of fake news conducted jointly by economists from Stanford and NYU found that fake news did not have a statistically significant effect on the election. This means that if all the fake news, pro and anti-Trump and pro and anti-Clinton, had been excised, Trump would have still won. The fact is that hardly anyone believes fake news, and those who do already had their minds made up. Second, there is no evidence that Trump colluded with the Russians. There is no evidence of any criminal agreement of any kind between Trump and Russia. Whatever you might think of Kellyanne Conway, a broken clock is right twice a day.
This is to help all the people at home. What's the conclusion? Collusion? No, we don't have that yet. I see illusion and delusion. So just so we're clear, everyone, 4 words. Conclusion, collusion, no. Illusion, delusion, yes.
On a related point, there is also no evidence that Russian hacking, vaguely defined, had an effect on the election.
Are you confident that no votes cast in the 2016 presidential election were altered?
I'm confident. By the time when I left as director, I'd seen no indication of that whatsoever.
I mention all of this again because this episode is proof that it is easy to fool the public, that it is easy to whip up mass hysteria even with something wholly fabricated. Furthermore, while the people are overwrought over the fake news story that Russia influenced the election, they overlook the foreign powers which are not only actually influencing elections, but also distorting the political process and killing American democracy and the American way of life. Let's put up a chart. The top 200 companies in the Fortune 500 invest approximately $1.2 billion in the political process every year. This is in the form of campaign contributions and lobbying activities. In return, these 200 companies receive approximately $900 billion in benefits from the American political process. This return is in the form of subsidies, favorable tax laws, and laws protecting prices, such as the cost of pharmaceuticals. This is a rate of return of 76,000%. Let's put up another chart to put this scam in perspective. The return these multinational corporations realize on their investment in the American political process is the same as what we would realize if we could deposit $1,000 on New Year's Day and finish the year with $760,000. Moreover, if we the people could get the same deal as the multinational corporations, we'd be able to do this every year. And not only would the investment be completely risk-free, since nearly everyone who could do something about the scam is in on the conspiracy, but also the return would be tax-free. Another perspective on the return these 200 corporations realize on their investment is that $900 billion is about 2/3 of federal tax revenues. As a consequence of their meager investment in the political process, these 200 corporations have control of 2/3 of America's resources, labor, creativity, and productivity. These 200 corporations are in all of the obvious industries: oil, banking, defense, technology, drugs, and insurance. Uniformly, these 200 multinational corporations structure their business affairs to export all profits to tax havens such as the Cayman Islands, Luxembourg, and Ireland. Uniformly, these 200 multinational corporations pay not one dime in American taxes. They are, in short, foreign powers which influence American elections and political affairs so as to obtain tangible benefits, benefits not available to the American public. If there's something people should concern themselves with, it's this. This is what is really eating at the heart of America. This is what is really destroying the American dream. In conclusion, it's not an exaggeration to say that we are living in a Ponzi scheme. America and the world are racking up debt which can never be repaid, and almost all the money is going to foreign multinational corporations which pay the politicians to maintain the system which generates such obscene profits, to maintain a system which spits on fairness. 95% of all new income generated by the funny money policies of the past 10 years has gone to the upper 0.01%. As a result, the global economy is unstable as it has been since the Great Depression. I can't predict what's going to happen or when, but I'm fairly certain of two things. One, the next phase is going to be painful, and two, whether or not Russia meddled in the election is the last thing in the world to worry about.
Goldman Sachs, another one of the largest financial institutions in the country. In 2010, Goldman Sachs operated 39 subsidiaries in offshore tax havens to avoid an estimated $3.3 billion in U.S. taxes. And on it goes. Corning, Boeing, Microsoft, Caterpillar, Cisco, Dow Chemicals. Example after example of large, profitable corporations. CEOs make millions and millions of dollars, and they say to the American people, we support cuts in programs for you, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, you name it, but don't ask us to pay more in taxes.
You just can't make this stuff up.